Let me tell you about two people I know. One of them saved just over $500,000 for retirement. The other saved close to $1.4 million. You'd think the second one is sleeping like a baby every night, right? Well, let me show you something that might completely flip how you see this. Because the man with $500,000, he retired at 65 with a smile on his face. He takes his grandkids to breakfast every Saturday. He plays golf twice a week. He sleeps 8 hours a night without ever checking his portfolio. The man with $1.4 million, he's 68 years old, still working part-time, and constantly refreshing his account balance. He worries every time the market dips. He hasn't taken a real vacation in 3 years. Same country, same economy, same time period, completely different lives. And the reason has almost nothing to do with the size of their savings account. So today, I want to walk you through the exact strategy that turned $500,000 into what felt like more than $1 million. Because if you've ever looked at your retirement number and thought, this isn't enough, this video is for you. Let me introduce you to William. He's 66 years old, spent 38 years working as a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant in Ohio. He owns a modest 3-bedroom home that he paid off 2 years before retiring. He drives a 2015 Toyota, nothing fancy. William saved $512,000 in his 401k. That was the number that used to keep him awake at night. Every financial article he read said he needed at least $1 million. Every retirement calculator online told him he was short. Every conversation with his brother-in-law made him feel behind. For years, William believed he'd have to work until 70, maybe even 72. He was tired, his knees hurt, and he wanted his time back. But he was scared, terrified actually. Then someone showed him something so simple, so obvious, that he almost couldn't believe he'd missed it his entire life. And once he saw it, everything shifted. Now, let me introduce you to Richard. Richard is 67 years old. He worked as a corporate manager for 40 years. He earned a great salary, drove nice cars, took his family on beautiful vacations. He saved aggressively. Richard has $1.38 million in his retirement accounts. On paper, he looks like a retirement success story. If you saw his balance, you'd probably feel a little jealous. Most people would, but here's what you don't see. Richard checks his balance 3 times a day. When the market drops 2%, his mood drops with it. He and his wife argue about spending. He hasn't bought himself a new suit in 5 years because he feels guilty. Same generation, same country, vastly different bank accounts. And yet William, the guy with $500,000, is the one actually living retirement. Richard is just surviving it. Why? Here's the thing most people miss. The real question isn't how much have you saved, it's how much income does your life actually need? And where is that income coming from every single month? Let that sink in for a second. Because our entire culture has trained us to focus on the wrong number. We chase the balance. We compare portfolios. We measure success by how many zeros are in the account. But retirement doesn't run on balances. It runs on income. Think of it this way. Imagine your retirement in 2 distinct parts. Not one giant lump sum, but 2 separate piles. Pile 1 is income that shows up no matter what. Social Security, pensions, annuities, anything guaranteed. Pile 2 is your savings, your investments, the money that fluctuates with the market. Most people only look at Pile 2. They obsess over it. They panic when it drops. But Pile 1, that quiet, steady pile, that's often the pile that actually determines whether you can sleep at night. William figured this out. Richard never did. And that single difference in perspective changed everything for both of them. Let me show you William's real numbers. When he turned 66, he filed for Social Security. Because he'd worked steadily his whole career, his monthly benefit came in at $2,680. His wife, who worked part-time as a nurse, gets her own benefit of $1,410. Together, that's $4,090 a month coming in guaranteed. On top of that, William has a small pension from the manufacturing plant. Nothing huge. It pays him $840 a month for the rest of his life. Add that in, and now their guaranteed monthly income is $4,930. That's $59,160 a year, guaranteed. Adjusted for inflation, coming in whether the market crashes tomorrow or booms for the next 20 years. William doesn't have to sell a single share to get that money. His monthly expenses? About $4,200. His house is paid off. His car is paid off. He has Medicare, plus a decent supplement. He and his wife live comfortably on around $50,000 a year. Do you see what just happened? William's guaranteed income is already more than his expenses. His $512,000 savings isn't paying his bills. It's just there, waiting, available for emergencies, for travel, for grandkids, for whatever life brings. Before we go any further, if you're finding this helpful, the subscribe button lives right down there. And I promise I only make videos worth watching. Now let's look at Richard. Richard's Social Security is higher because he earned more. He gets $3,220 a month. His wife gets $1,180. Together, $4,400 a month or $52,800 a year. Sounds great, right? Except Richard has no pension. His company switched to a 401k match program back in the 1990s. So his entire nest egg, that $1.38 million, is his only other source of income. Richard's monthly expenses are $8,900. He has a bigger house with a mortgage he refinanced years ago, 2 newer cars with payments, higher property taxes, a country club membership, regular travel. His lifestyle costs more than double William's. That means Richard needs $106,800 a year to keep his life running. His guaranteed income covers about half of it. The other half, roughly $54,000 a year, has to come from his savings. Suddenly, that $1.38 million doesn't feel so big, because if the market drops 30% next year, Richard's usable savings shrink to around $966,000, and he still needs to pull $54,000 out. That's a problem. That's the source of his stress. Here's what almost nobody talks about. 2 people can have wildly different savings and land in completely opposite emotional places. It's not about who has more saved, it's about who has more certainty. Think of Social Security like a faucet. Behind that faucet is a pipe that you've been filling your entire working life. Every paycheck, every payroll tax, it all built pressure in that pipe. And when you finally turn the handle, water flows out for the rest of your life. That water is inflation adjusted. It doesn't stop when the market crashes. It doesn't disappear if you live to 95. It just keeps flowing, year after year, adjusted for the cost of living. Now here's where it gets interesting. If you turn the handle too early, less water flows. If you wait longer, more water flows. And if you wait too long or delay for the wrong reasons, some of that water never reaches you. It just stays in the pipe, unused, gone. No refunds, no second chances. William turned on his faucet at 66, his full retirement age. He got his complete benefit. His wife filed at 62 because her benefit was smaller and they wanted the cash flow. Together, they made a decision based on their actual life, not a magazine article. Richard, meanwhile, is delaying his benefit until 70 because someone told him it was the smart move. But because his expenses are so high, he's burning through his 401k at a scary rate while he waits. He's technically going to get a bigger check later, but the cost of waiting is eating him alive right now. Here's a question. If you had to choose between more money or more certainty, which would you pick? Keep that in your head as we go. Now let's talk about something that quietly destroys more retirements than any market crash: inflation. It's the silent partner nobody invites to the retirement party, but it always shows up. Inflation is like an ice cube in the sun. It doesn't melt all at once. It creeps. It nudges. It slowly raises the cost of your groceries, your medications, your utility bills, your insurance premiums. You barely notice it month to month, but over 20 years of retirement, a 3% inflation rate cuts your purchasing power almost in half. That $50,000 a year lifestyle you built at 65, by 85, you'd need close to $90,000 to maintain the exact same standard of living. This is where Social Security quietly becomes a hero, because Social Security has cost of living adjustments built in. Every year, your benefit grows to try to keep pace with inflation. Your pipe pumps a little harder each year. Private savings don't do that automatically. Your 401k doesn't magically grow just because bread got more expensive. You have to withdraw more, which means you deplete your account faster, which creates more stress, which affects your sleep, which affects your health. William's guaranteed income is largely inflation protected. His pension has a partial COLA, his Social Security has a full COLA, so as prices rise, his income rises with them. He doesn't have to do anything. Richard's guaranteed income covers less than half of his expenses, so inflation hits the other half twice as hard. Every year that prices rise, he has to pull more from his savings just to stand still. It's like walking up a down escalator that keeps speeding up. Here's something else William understood that most people miss. Retirement isn't one long straight line. It has phases, and your money needs to behave differently in each phase. The first phase, roughly ages 62 to 75, is what people call the go-go years. This is when you have the energy to travel, to visit family, to do the things you postponed. Spending is usually higher during these years. The second phase, roughly 75 to 85, is the slow-go years. Travel becomes less frequent. Home life becomes more comfortable. Spending naturally decreases in most categories, though healthcare starts climbing. The third phase, 85 and beyond, is the no-go years. Spending drops significantly in most areas, but healthcare and potential long-term care costs can spike dramatically. This is where planning matters most. William plans his income around these phases. He and his wife are traveling more now while they can. They're using some of their $512,000 to enjoy this phase. They know spending will drop later, and their guaranteed income will still be there. Richard treats his entire retirement like one long, uniform stretch. He worries about the same amount of money for age 68 that he worries about for age 88, and that constant uniform anxiety is exhausting him. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. Really. Because peace of mind, actual peace, doesn't come from a bigger balance. It comes from understanding how your income works and knowing it will show up. Let me ask you something. Do you actually know what your monthly income will look like when you retire? Not a rough guess, the real number. Be honest with yourself. Most people can't answer that. They know their 401k balance. They know their home value. But they've never sat down and calculated exactly what will hit their bank account each month once the paychecks stop. And that gap in knowledge is where fear lives. Here's what William did about a year before he retired. He sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad, and he wrote down every source of income he'd have. Social Security, pension, wife's Social Security. That was it. 3 lines. Then he added them up. $4,930 a month. Then he wrote down every recurring expense. Mortgage-free housing costs, utilities, groceries, gas, insurance, Medicare, streaming services, everything. It came to about $4,200 a month. The difference was $730 a month left over before he even touched his savings. That single piece of paper changed his entire mindset. Suddenly, retirement wasn't a fear. It was a math problem he'd already solved. Richard has never done this exercise, not once in 40 years of earning. He knows his account balances. He knows his salary history, but he's never mapped his actual income against his actual expenses. And that's why every market headline feels like a personal threat. Here's another thing William figured out that quietly saved his retirement. He didn't try to replace 100% of his working income. That's a myth that gets repeated everywhere, and it terrifies people unnecessarily. When you're working, you're paying payroll taxes, you're saving for retirement, you're commuting, you're buying work clothes, work lunches, work coffee. All of that stops or shrinks the day you retire. Most retirees need 65% to 75% of their working income to maintain the same lifestyle. William made about $71,000 a year at the plant. 70% of that is around $50,000. That's exactly what he and his wife are living on. He didn't need to replace $71,000. He needed to replace roughly $50,000, and his guaranteed income already gets him to $59,000. That gap, that quiet gap between what people think they need and what they actually need, has convinced millions of Americans that they can't afford to retire, when many of them actually can, right now, today. Let me pause here and say something important. If this content is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button. I never waste my viewers' time, and there's a lot more of these coming. Now let's get into the actual strategy that changed William's life. Because up until this point, I've been describing his situation. Let me walk you through the specific moves he made in the 2 years before he retired. Step 1, He calculated his real Social Security benefit at 3 different ages. Not a guess. He went to the official Social Security website, logged into his account, and pulled his actual statement. His benefit at 62 was $1,940. At 66, his full retirement age, it was $2,680. At 70, it would be $3,540. Then he did the math nobody teaches you. From 62 to 66, he'd receive $93,120 in early benefits. To break even by taking it at 66 instead of 62, he'd need to live past age 78. He was in good health, so waiting made sense. But if he'd been in poor health, taking it at 62 might have been the smarter play. Step 2. He estimated his wife's benefit and coordinated their filing strategy. Her lower earnings meant her own benefit was $1,410, but she also qualified for a spousal benefit off William's record. They compared both options and picked the higher one. Step 3, he added up all his guaranteed income sources and compared them directly to his projected expenses. This was the kitchen table exercise. Simple, boring, life-changing. Step 4, he built a small cash cushion outside of his investments. He set aside 12 months of expenses in a plain savings account. That way, if the market dropped in his first year of retirement, he wouldn't have to sell anything at a loss. Step 5, he made a spending plan for his savings that treated it as a supplement, not a lifeline. His $512,000 wasn't going to pay his bills. It was going to pay for experiences, gifts, emergencies, and long-term care if it ever came to that. That's it. 5 simple steps. No fancy annuities, no complex withdrawal strategies, no financial advisor charging 1.5% a year, just clear thinking and honest numbers. Retirement isn't about how much you've accumulated. It's about whether your income can support your life. And once you see that clearly, the entire game changes. Now let's talk about something that quietly worries every married retiree, even if they don't say it out loud. What happens when one spouse passes away? Because retirement planning isn't just about you, it's about protecting the person you love most from financial pain during emotional pain. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse loses the lower of the 2 Social Security benefits. So in William's case, if he passed away first, his wife would keep his $2,680 benefit, but lose her $1,410. Total monthly income drops from $4,090 to $2,680. That's a $1,410 monthly cut, on top of grief. William knew this, so he specifically waited until 66 to file. His higher benefit becomes her survivor benefit for the rest of her life. That single decision could mean an extra $200,000 or more in her lifetime, depending on how long she lives. He also made sure his small pension had a survivor option. It reduced his monthly benefit slightly, but it guarantees his wife will keep 60% of it if he dies first. Another quiet decision that most people never think about. Richard, with all his money, never coordinated any of this. His wife knows the account balances, but doesn't know how to convert them into monthly income. If Richard dies first, she'll inherit $1.38 million and have absolutely no idea how to make it last. Which one of these couples actually has a plan? Not the one with more money, the one with more thinking. Here's a question for the married folks. Have you and your spouse ever actually talked about what happens if one of you is gone? Not the emotional side, the financial side. Most couples avoid it, and that silence costs. Let me shift gears and talk about something that trips up almost every retiree at some point: expenses. Specifically, the quiet way expenses grow when you're not paying attention. Most people underestimate their retirement expenses by 20% to 30%. They forget about property tax increases. They forget about Medicare premium hikes. They forget that their car will eventually need to be replaced. They forget that adult children sometimes need help. William built a buffer for all of this. His $730 monthly surplus wasn't just spending money, it was the shock absorber for his life. When his roof needed replacing last year, he used part of that surplus over 12 months instead of tapping his savings. Richard's monthly expenses are already at the limit of his combined income and safe withdrawal rate. There's no shock absorber. Every unexpected expense feels like an emergency. Every large bill triggers a stress spiral. The quiet lesson here is powerful. It's not about how much you spend. It's about how much space you leave between what you spend and what comes in. That space is where peace lives. Let me give you the emotional truth of what's happening in these 2 households. Because numbers only tell part of this story. William wakes up around 7 a.m. He makes coffee, he reads the news, but he doesn't check his portfolio because he doesn't need to. His income is coming. He knows the amount. He plans his day around what he wants to do, not what he can afford to do. His biggest financial decision this week was whether to buy his grandson a mountain bike for his 12th birthday. He decided yes. He didn't spend 3 hours agonizing over the $340. He just did it because his life has room for it. Richard wakes up at 5:30 a.m. He immediately checks his phone. He looks at overnight market movements. He calculates what his portfolio did while he slept. His mood is set before his feet touch the floor. His biggest financial decision this week is whether to cancel a planned trip to Italy because he's worried about the market. His wife wants to go. She's been looking forward to it for a year. But Richard can't stop calculating the withdrawal rate, and it's suffocating him. Same day, same country, same weather, two completely different emotional retirements. And the difference isn't the money. The difference is the structure. You don't need perfection to have a successful retirement. You need clarity. And clarity comes from understanding your income, not maximizing your savings. Here's something to think about. If you found out today that you're actually on track, how would that change your week? Would you sleep better tonight? Would you say yes to that dinner invitation? Would you finally book that trip? Most people are waiting to feel financially safe before they start actually living. But the safety they're chasing already exists in their guaranteed income. They just haven't done the math to see it. Now let me address something painful but important. Some of you watching this don't have a pension. Some of you have modest Social Security benefits. Some of you didn't save $500,000, and you're wondering if any of this applies to you. It does. In fact, it applies even more, because when you have less, structure matters more. And the good news is, structure is free. It doesn't cost anything to sit down and map your real income against your real expenses. If your Social Security is $1,800 a month and your expenses are $2,100 a month, you have a $300 monthly gap. That's not a crisis. That's a math problem. There are dozens of ways to close a $300 gap. Downsizing, part-time work, adjusting insurance, reducing one specific category. The tragedy isn't small savings. The tragedy is not knowing the numbers, because people with modest savings and clear vision often outperform, emotionally and practically, people with large savings and complete confusion. Stop measuring yourself against everyone else. Start focusing on what actually gives you freedom. Let me give you the practical framework William used. 5 clear steps. Nothing complicated. You could start today. First, list your guaranteed income sources with real numbers, not estimates, real. Log into Social Security, pull your pension statement, check any annuities, add up the actual monthly amount. Second, list your real monthly expenses, not what you think you spend, what you actually spend. Pull 3 months of bank statements. Categorize everything. Include the annual stuff divided by 12, like property tax and car insurance. Third, calculate the gap or surplus, income minus expenses. That single number tells you more about your retirement readiness than any account balance ever will. Fourth, decide how your savings will support the gap if there is one. A safe starting point is withdrawing 4% of your savings per year. On $500,000, that's $20,000 a year, or roughly $1,670 a month. Plan your withdrawals accordingly. Fifth, build a cash buffer for the first 2 years of retirement. Keep 12 to 24 months of expenses in a plain, boring savings account. This protects you from having to sell investments during a downturn. That's the entire strategy. Not glamorous, not exciting, not something you'll see advertised. But it's what quietly separates William's peace from Richard's panic. If this video is resonating with you so far, I'd love for you to subscribe. I make videos like this one on a regular basis, and I'd love for you to be part of what's coming next. Let me tell you the last piece of William's story. About 6 months into his retirement, the market dropped 18% in a single quarter. Headlines were screaming, analysts were panicking, half the retirees in America were rewriting their budgets. William looked at his account. It had dropped from $512,000 to about $420,000 on paper. And then he did something remarkable. He turned off the TV, made himself a cup of coffee, and went back to reading his book. Because his income hadn't changed, his Social Security hit his account like clockwork. His pension arrived on time. His expenses were still covered. The market drop was noise, not a threat. 6 months later, the market recovered most of the loss. William hadn't sold anything. He hadn't panicked. He hadn't made a single emotional decision. His structure protected him from himself, which is one of the most valuable things any retirement plan can do. Richard, during that same drop, sold about $180,000 worth of investments in a panic. He locked in a loss he didn't need to take. His financial advisor tried to talk him out of it. He didn't listen. That single week of fear cost him roughly $60,000 in permanent losses when the market recovered. The difference between $500,000 and $1.4 million didn't matter that week. What mattered was the structure, the certainty, the floor of guaranteed income that let William stay calm. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Retirement isn't a number, it's a system, and most people are running around trying to hit a number when they should be building a system. You may already be closer than you think. Your Social Security benefit is likely worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in equivalent savings. Your pension, if you have one, is worth even more. Your paid-off home, your Medicare, your years of contribution, all of it is quietly working in your favor. The savings account matters. Of course it does. But it's the supplement, not the foundation. It's the furniture, not the house. The house is your guaranteed income, and most Americans already have more house than they realize. If you understand your numbers, if you build your income floor, if you define your life on your terms, you don't chase anymore. You decide. And that's the shift from fear to clarity, from chasing to choosing, from not enough to enough. William thought $512,000 wasn't enough. Then he saw the full picture. Now he lives a retirement millionaires can't buy, because what he found isn't in the balance, it's in the structure. You don't need to be William to have his peace. You just need to do what he did. Sit at your kitchen table, write down your real numbers, compare income to expenses, build a buffer, make a plan. That's it. That's the whole thing. The number in your account is not the whole story. It never was. The story is your life, your income, your expenses, your certainty. And once you see it clearly, you'll wonder why you spent so many years afraid of a number that never really mattered. If this video helped you see your retirement in a new way, hit that subscribe button. I've got a lot more where this came from. I'll see you in the next one.